The message came from somewhere beyond the known stars. It was a desperate cry for help, broadcast across the galaxy in every frequency possible. Ambassador Talith stood in the Grand Council chamber of Velen Prime, her thin fingers trembling as she authorized the transmission. She knew this was their last hope. The Velen Confederation was dying. In just 6 months, the Cost Swarm had destroyed 70% of their worlds. The Velens were a peaceful people. They had never known war, never needed weapons beyond simple tools. Their 4 species had lived together in harmony for thousands of years, sharing technology and resources. They built beautiful cities of crystal and light. They wrote poetry and studied the stars. But the Cost did not care about beauty or poetry. They only wanted to consume and expand. Tealith watched the holographic display showing another colony fall. Thousands of Velens died in minutes. The Cost warriors were massive creatures, 4 meters tall with razor-sharp claws and armor-like shells. They moved through Velen defenses like they were nothing. The Velen security forces had energy shields and plasma cutters meant for construction, not warfare. Against the Cost, they might as well have been throwing stones. The distress signal traveled through space for weeks. It reached hundreds of civilizations. Most ignored it. Some sent messages of sympathy, but no help. A few species offered to accept Velen refugees, but only in small numbers. No one wanted to fight the Cost Swarm. Then Earth answered. Commander Taman stood on the bridge of the battlecruiser Inchin, reading the translated message from the Velens. He was a tall man with short black hair and sharp eyes that had seen too many battles. His uniform was dark gray with the insignia of the United Earth Defense Force on his shoulder. Around him, his bridge crew worked at their stations, monitoring the long-range sensors. "What do we know about these Velens?" Taman asked. Lieutenant Haywan pulled up data on the main screen. She was his tactical officer, a woman with a quick mind and quicker reflexes. "Not much, sir. They've never contacted us before. Our deep space probes detected their civilization about 5 years ago, but we've been too busy with our own problems to make first contact." Taman nodded. Earth had only recently unified after decades of war. The different nations and factions had finally come together under one government, but the scars were still fresh. Humanity had learned to fight during those dark years. They had learned to survive. "What about this Cost Swarm?" Taman asked. Dong Hyun spoke up from the engineering station. He was the weapons specialist, a stocky man who understood machines better than people. "Aggressive species, sir. They expand by conquering other worlds. From what little we can gather, they're strong and fast. Evolved on a heavy-gravity world." "Interesting," Taemin said. He looked at the star map showing the Cost expansion pattern. His eyes narrowed. "Hey, Wan, if they keep expanding at this rate, when do they reach human space?" Haywan ran the calculations. 10 years, sir. Maybe 12 if they slow down." The bridge went quiet. Everyone understood what that meant. The Cost would come for Earth eventually. Better to fight them now, far from home, than wait for them to arrive at humanity's doorstep. Taemin made his decision. "Send a message to Earth Command. Recommend we accept the Velen request. We'll need a full battle group." Yuna, the chief medical officer, looked up from her station. She was a gentlewoman with steady hands and a calm voice. "Sir, do we know if humans and Velens are even compatible? What if our presence makes things worse?" "Then we'll adapt," Taemin said. "We always do." 3 weeks later, Battle Group Teguk assembled in orbit around Earth. 12 warships carrying 5,000 human soldiers. The ships were blocky and functional, covered in armor plating and bristling with weapons. They looked nothing like the elegant Velen vessels shown in the intercepted transmissions. Human ships were built to take damage and keep fighting. Taemin addressed his senior officers in the briefing room. Hae-won, Dong-hyun, and Yu-na were there, along with Sergeant Kwan, the leader of the ground forces. Kwan was a veteran of the Unification Wars, a muscular man with scars on his hands and a calm demeanor that never broke, even in the worst fighting. "We're going into unknown territory," Taemin said. "We don't know what we'll find. The Velens might be hostile, the Cost might be more dangerous than we think, but humanity has survived worse." "What are our rules of engagement?" Kwan asked. "Protect the Velens. Eliminate the Cost threat. Try not to start any new wars, Taemin said with a slight smile. Standard procedure. The journey took 2 weeks through faster-than-light travel. When Battle Group Taeguk emerged near Velen Prime, they immediately received dozens of transmissions. The Velens were shocked that someone had actually come. Ambassador Tillith watched the human ships approach on her view screen. They looked brutal and intimidating compared to Velen vessels. She felt a flutter of fear. What kind of species builds such aggressive-looking ships? But she had no choice. The cost had destroyed another world just yesterday. The Confederation would be extinct within months without help. The first shuttle landed in the capital city's spaceport. Tillith and her council members waited nervously. The shuttle door opened, and Commander Taemin stepped out. Tillith stared. The human was massive. He stood nearly twice her height, and his body looked incredibly dense and solid. His movements were controlled but powerful. When he walked down the ramp, each step was heavy and deliberate. Behind him came more humans, all of them looking like warriors built for violence. Taemin approached the Velen delegation and stopped a respectful distance away. He had been briefed on Velen customs. He bowed slightly. Ambassador Tillith, he said through the translation device. I am Commander Taemin of the United Earth Defense Force. We received your distress call. We're here to help. Tillith tried to speak, but her voice caught. She stepped forward and extended her hand in the Velen greeting gesture. Taemin carefully took her hand, trying to be gentle. Even so, Tillith gasped. The human's grip was firm and warm, his skin tough and his strength overwhelming. She realized he was holding back, being as careful as he could, and she was still afraid he might accidentally crush her fingers. Thank you for coming, Tillith finally managed to say. We did not think anyone would answer. Earth looks after its neighbors, Taemin said, even ones we haven't met yet. Tillith looked at the human soldiers standing behind their commander. They wore armor and carried weapons that looked far more advanced than anything the Velens had. These were not peaceful explorers. These were professional warriors from a world that had forged them in fire. Can you really fight the cost? Tillith asked, hope and fear mixing in her voice. Taemin looked at the datapad showing cost battle footage. He watched the alien warriors tear through Velen defenses. He saw their size and strength, their savage tactics. Then he looked back at Tillith. Yes, he said simply, we can fight them, and we will win. Tillith wanted to believe him. But she had no idea what humans were truly capable of. None of the Velens did. They were about to find out. The Velen scientists could not believe what they were seeing. Dr. Rena stood in the medical bay, staring at the data from the human biological scans. His hands shook as he reviewed the numbers for the third time. This could not be correct. Their bone density is off the scale, he said to his assistant, and their muscle tissue is so compact. How do they even move? Corporal Hyunwoo sat patiently on the examination table while the Velen doctors fussed over him. He was a young soldier, cheerful and friendly, who had volunteered to let the aliens study human biology. He found the whole thing amusing. The Velen medical equipment looked like delicate jewelry compared to the robust scanners back on Earth. Is everything okay? Hyunwoo asked. Dr. Renus looked up at the human. Your world's gravity is how strong? Standard Earth gravity is about 9.8 meters per second squared, Hyunwoo said. Why? The Velen doctor made a choking sound. That is 90% higher than our homeworld. How do you survive that? Hyunwoo shrugged. We just do. It's normal for us. Normal. The word made Renus feel faint. He pulled up the classification data that the humans had shared about Earth. The planet was rated as a Class 12 death world. Only 3 other known worlds in the galaxy had such a high danger rating, and none of them had produced intelligent life. Until now, Earth had extreme weather patterns. Hurricanes that could destroy cities, earthquakes that split the ground open, volcanoes that buried entire regions in ash. The temperature ranged from heat that could kill in hours to cold that could kill in minutes. The planet was covered in predators, from tiny bacteria to massive animals that weighed several tons. Diseases that evolved to attack human biology. plants that could poison with a touch. And humans just lived there. They thrived there. Your people eat poison, Renus said, scrolling through the dietary information. This substance, caffeine, it is a pesticide. And capsaicin, a chemical weapon used by plants. Alcohol, which is literally toxic. Why would you consume these things? Because they taste good? Hyunwoo said. Coffee is great, and spicy food is delicious. Beer is nice after a long day. Renus felt his worldview shifting. These humans were insane. They had to be. No sane species would deliberately consume toxins for pleasure. Meanwhile, in the military training grounds, Lieutenant G.A. was demonstrating human physical capabilities. Ambassador Tealith and several Velen commanders watched as the human woman stretched and prepared to run. GAA was slender by human standards, but to the Velens she looked incredibly powerful. I will run 10 kilometers in full combat gear, G.I. explained through the translator. This is a standard training exercise for human soldiers. The Velen guards exchanged looks. 10 kilometers? In armor? They could barely run 1 kilometer without their gear. We will accompany you, Commander Vareth said. He was the head of Velen security, a proud individual who did not want to seem weak in front of these strange aliens. Gi smiled politely. Of course. She started running at what she considered an easy pace. Within 2 minutes, the Velen guards were struggling to keep up. Their breathing became labored. Their movements grew clumsy. By the 5-minute mark, 3 of them had collapsed from exhaustion. Ga noticed and stopped. Are you all right? She asked, jogging back to check on them. Commander Vareth was bent over, gasping for air. His pride was shattered. How are you not tired? He wheezed. I am a bit tired, Ga admitted, but I can keep going for another hour at least. Maybe 2 if I pace myself. The Velens stared at her in horror and awe. This was just a regular soldier. Not even their best warrior, just an average human. And she could run for hours in heavy armor without stopping. Back at the command center, Engineer Dong Hyun was showing Velen technicians the human weapon systems. He had set up a demonstration in a secured testing range outside the city. The Velens crowded around, curious but nervous. This is a standard infantry railgun, Dong Hyun explained, holding up the weapon. It was a sleek black rifle with a magnetic acceleration system. It fires solid projectiles using electromagnetic force. How much force? One of the Velen engineers asked. Dong Hyun checked the settings. This one is set to medium power, about 15 megajoules per shot. The Velens looked confused. That meant nothing to them. Dong Hyun pointed to a target downrange. It was a thick plate of Velen ship armor, the strongest material they had. Watch, he said. He aimed and fired. The railgun made a sharp crack. The projectile hit the armor plate and punched straight through it. Then it went through the plate behind it. And the one behind that. The round finally stopped after penetrating 6 layers of armor plating. The Velen engineers stood in shocked silence. That is impossible, one of them finally said. Our ship armor is designed to withstand plasma fire and energy weapons. Nothing should penetrate it like that. Kinetic force, Dong Hyun explained. We accelerate a solid mass to extremely high velocity. Simple physics, really. Simple physics. The Velens felt like children being lectured. They had developed energy shields and plasma technology, but they had never considered using such brutal, simple force. How much damage could this weapon do to one of our ships? A Velen captain asked quietly. Dong Hyun did some quick math. One shot would probably go through 12 bulkheads before stopping. A sustained burst would split your ship in half. The Velens looked at each other nervously. They had invited these humans to help them. These incredibly dangerous, impossibly strong, weapon-obsessed humans. What had they done? That evening, Commander Taemin met with Ambassador Tealith in her private office. The Velen leader looked exhausted and overwhelmed. Your people are terrifying, Tealith said bluntly. Do you know that? Taemin nodded. We get that reaction sometimes. We do not mean to frighten you. Your soldiers can run for hours without stopping. Your weapons can destroy our strongest ships. Your bodies are so dense and powerful that we fear shaking your hands might break our bones, Tealith said. She looked at him with wide eyes. What kind of world creates such beings? A harsh one, Taman said honestly. Earth is not kind. It has never been kind. For millions of years, our planet tried to kill us. Predators hunted us. Diseases infected us. Weather destroyed our homes. We survived by becoming stronger, faster, smarter. We adapted, or we died. And now you are here, Tillith said softly. Now we are here, Taman agreed. And we will use everything our harsh world taught us to protect you. Tillith wanted to feel reassured, but she was still afraid. She pulled up the intelligence reports on the Kost swarm. The Kost are incredibly dangerous. They are apex predators from a heavy-gravity world. They have never lost in close combat. They are stronger and faster than any species we know. Taman reviewed the data. He watched footage of Kost warriors tearing through Velen defenses. They were impressive creatures, no doubt. Large, powerful, aggressive. But as he watched, he made mental notes. Their tactics were straightforward. Their attacks were predictable. They relied on brute strength. They are dangerous, Taman admitted, but we have fought worse. How can you say that? Tillith asked. They destroyed our best forces in minutes. Taman looked at her calmly. Ambassador, with respect, your forces have never been tested. You have lived in peace for thousands of years. That is wonderful. That is something to be proud of. But it also means you do not know war. He gestured to the window where human soldiers were training in the courtyard below. Those soldiers have been fighting since they were old enough to hold weapons. They trained on a world where gravity itself is a constant enemy. They grew up knowing that weakness means death. Every human you see has the instincts of a survivor. Tillith watched the humans below. They moved with such confidence and power. They laughed and joked with each other, but there was steel beneath their friendly exteriors. These were predators pretending to be civilized. The Kost have never fought humans, Taman continued. They do not know what we are capable of, and that gives us an advantage. What advantage? Tillith asked. Taman smiled, and it was not a comforting expression. Surprise! The next morning, alarms blared across Velen Prime. A Kost fleet had been detected entering the system. They were heading for Corvin Station, a critical supply hub in orbit around the fourth planet. If Corvin fell, the Velens would lose their ability to support their remaining colonies. Taman stood on the bridge of the Inchin, watching the tactical display. The Kost had 3 heavy cruisers and 24 smaller attack ships. It was a significant force. Time to intercept, he asked. 40 minutes at maximum speed, Haywan reported. Too long. The Kost would reach Corvin in 30 minutes. Taman looked at his options and made a decision that would change everything. Prepare emergency drop pods, he ordered. Get me Sergeant Quan. Corvin Station hung in orbit like a metal flower, its 5 arms spreading out from the central hub. Each arm contained storage bays, docking ports, and living quarters for the 300 Velen workers who operated the facility. It was a peaceful place, designed for efficiency and comfort. Then the Kost arrived. Station Commander Polis watched in horror as the alien ships appeared on his sensors. 3 massive cruisers, covered in organic armor that looked like insect shells. Dozens of smaller ships swarmed around them like angry wasps. He immediately activated the distress beacon and ordered evacuation procedures. But the Kost were faster than anyone expected. Their attack ships launched boarding pods that slammed into Corvin's hull like bullets. The pods drilled through the outer armor and disgorged Kost warriors into the corridors. Paulie saw them on the security cameras and felt terror grip his heart. The Kost were enormous. They stood on 4 legs with 2 upper limbs ending in blade-like claws. Their heads had multiple eyes and mandibles that dripped with venom. They moved with horrifying speed, their bodies adapted to gravity even stronger than Earth's. The Velen security teams tried to fight back. They had energy batons and small plasma cutters. Against the Kost, they might as well have been unarmed. The aliens tore through them like paper. Paulus watched his people die and knew there was no hope. 40 light seconds away, Sergeant Quan stood in the drop pod bay of the Inchin. Around him, 50 human soldiers were checking their equipment and sealing their armor. These were veterans, men and women who had survived the worst fights Earth had to offer. They looked calm and focused. Quan himself was a solid man with gray hair and steady hands. He had fought in urban combat, jungle warfare, desert campaigns, and zero-gravity boarding actions. He had seen friends die and enemies win. He had also learned how to turn defeat into victory through sheer determination. "Listen up," he said to his team. "We are going in hot. The Cost have already boarded Corvin. They are killing civilians. We have 30 minutes before the main fleet arrives. Our job is to clear the station and secure the survivors." Corporal Yunji raised her hand. She was a slim woman with sharp eyes and a sniper rifle slung across her back. "What are our engagement rules?" "Any cost is hostile, weapons free. Protect civilians at all costs," Quan said. He looked at each of them. "These aliens think they are apex predators. Let us teach them about Earth." The soldiers grinned. Private Sung Ho, the demolitions expert, patted the explosive charges on his belt. "Going to be a good day." The drop pods launched from the Incheon like meteors. They were small armored cylinders, each carrying one soldier. Inside, Quan felt the acceleration press him into his seat. The pod's inertial dampeners kept him from being crushed, but it was still an uncomfortable ride. He watched the countdown timer. The pod's AI guided it toward Corvin Station, making tiny adjustments to avoid debris. Quan checked his rifle one more time. Fully loaded, safety off. Ready. The pod hit Corvin's hull at high speed. The armored nose pierced through the outer plating and into a cargo bay. The pod door blew open and Quan rolled out, weapon up and scanning for targets. The cargo bay was full of terrified Velen workers hiding behind shipping containers. No cost yet. Quan activated his helmet communicator. "Team 1, clear. Securing Bay 4. Around the station, the other pods crashed through the hull. 50 human soldiers entered Corvin in a coordinated assault. Within seconds, they had established defensive positions and began moving through the corridors. Quan's team moved in a tight formation. 2 soldiers in front, watching for threats. 2 on the sides, covering the flanks. Quan in the middle, coordinating. They moved smoothly, their training taking over. They found the first Cost in Corridor 12. The alien warrior was standing over the bodies of 3 Velen guards, feeding. It heard the humans approaching and spun around, hissing. Quan got his first good look at the enemy. The Cost was huge, its body armored with natural plating that looked incredibly thick. Its claws were stained with blood. Its multiple eyes focused on the humans with predatory intelligence. The Cost charged. It moved terrifyingly fast, crossing 20 meters in seconds. Its claws extended, ready to tear the humans apart just like it had the Velens. Quan and his team opened fire. The corridor lit up with muzzle flashes. Bullets slammed into the Cost's armor, some bouncing off, others penetrating. The aliens shrieked but kept coming. It was almost on them when Quan aimed for the joints, where the armor was thinner, and fired a 3-round burst. The Cost's leg exploded in green blood. It stumbled and crashed to the floor. Before it could recover, the soldiers finished it with concentrated fire to its head. The entire engagement lasted 5 seconds. "First kill confirmed," Quan reported. "Keep moving." They found more Cost as they pushed deeper into the station. The aliens had spread throughout Corvin, hunting Velens through the corridors, but now they faced an enemy they did not understand. In Section 7, Corporal Yunji set up her sniper position overlooking a large maintenance bay. Through her scope, she saw 4 Cost warriors herding a group of Velen civilians. The aliens were toying with their prey, enjoying the fear. Yunji controlled her breathing and calculated the shot. The Cost were moving, but their patterns were predictable. She aimed at the largest one, leading it slightly. She squeezed the trigger. The armor-piercing round hit the Cost in its center eye cluster. The alien's head snapped back and it collapsed. The other Cost spun around, confused. Where had the attack come from? Yunji fired again, and again. 3 shots, 3 dead Cost. The 4th one tried to run, but she caught it before it reached cover. The Velen civilians stood frozen, unable to believe what they had just witnessed. Civilians secured in Section 7, Yunji reported calmly. Moving to next position. Private Sung Ho had a different approach. He reached the station's reactor level and found it crawling with cost. At least 20 warriors, maybe more. They were trying to disable the reactor, probably to prevent the station from being useful to the Velens. Sung Ho smiled. This was his kind of problem. He planted shaped charges at key points along the reactor's cooling system, then activated a remote detonator. He retreated to a safe distance and waited. When the cost were all gathered near the reactor, he triggered the charges. The explosions were carefully controlled, just enough to create a localized electromagnetic pulse. The lights went out, emergency systems failed, and most importantly, the cost's communication implants shorted out. The aliens were suddenly blind and unable to coordinate. Sung Ho activated his night vision and waded into the confusion with his shotgun. In the darkness, he was the predator and they were the prey. Throughout Corvin Station, the battle raged. The humans moved like ghosts, appearing where they were needed and vanishing when the cost tried to group up. They used grenades to flush aliens out of hiding. They used the station's own structure against them, collapsing corridors and sealing sections. They fought with a coordination and tactical awareness that the cost had never encountered. The cost were strong and fast, but they relied on individual prowess. They were ambush hunters who expected their prey to run and hide. The humans did neither. They advanced methodically, clearing room by room, corridor by corridor. When wounded, they kept fighting. When outnumbered, they used terrain and tactics to even the odds. Sergeant Quan reached the station's command center and found Commander Polis huddled under a desk with two other Velens. The door had been barricaded, but claw marks showed the cost had been trying to break through. "You are safe now," Quan said, helping the Velen to his feet. Polis stared at the human. "How many soldiers did you bring?" 50, Quan said. 50? Polis could not believe it. "There were 300 cost warriors on my station. You sent 50 soldiers?" "We sent enough," Quan said simply. He activated his communicator. "All teams, status report." The responses came in one by one. Team leaders reported their sections clear. Civilian casualties were lower than expected. Human casualties were 3 wounded, none serious. The cost were being systematically eliminated. "Sir, we have a problem," Yunji reported. 20 cost have barricaded themselves in the main docking bay. They have hostages. Quan frowned. A hostage situation was always complicated. He started toward the docking bay, his mind already working on solutions. When he arrived, he assessed the situation quickly. The cost had gathered in the center of the large bay, surrounded by crates and equipment. They held 15 Velen workers as shields. The aliens were hissing and making threatening gestures. "They want to negotiate," Commander Polis said. He had followed Quan despite being told to stay in the command center. "They will release the hostages if we let them leave on their ships." Quan looked at the cost. Then he looked at his soldiers, positioned around the bay's perimeter. He thought about the Velens who had already died. He thought about what would happen if these cost escaped and reported back to their fleet about human tactics. "No," he said. "No?" Polis was shocked. "But the hostages—" "Will be fine," Quan said. He activated his team channel. "Yunji, can you get a clean shot?" The sniper's voice came back immediately. "Negative. Too many civilians in the line of fire." "Sung Ho, options?" The demolitions expert thought for a moment. "I can blow the external docking door. Explosive decompression would pull everything toward space. But the civilians—" Quan smiled. "Would be pulled toward space, yes. Yunji, you have grapple lines?" "Always, sir." "Then here is what we do," Quan explained his plan. It was risky and required perfect timing, but it would work. 5 minutes later, everything was in position. Sung Ho had his charges ready. Yunji and 3 other soldiers had their grapple guns aimed at the hostages. The rest of the team was braced against secure points. "Execute," Quan ordered. The charges blew. The external door exploded outward. Atmosphere rushed out of the docking bay in a violent wind. The Cost and their hostages were pulled toward the gaping hole in space. But the humans had planned for this. Grapple lines shot out, magnetic clamps attaching to the Velen's clothing. The soldiers hauled the civilians back to safety while the Cost were sucked out into the vacuum. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut, sealing the breach. Quan helped the last Velen to safety and looked around. All hostages rescued. All Cost eliminated. Mission complete. 2 hours later, the main human fleet arrived. They found Corvin Station secure, its Velen crew shaken but alive, and 300 Cost warriors dead. Commander Timon reviewed the battle reports and allowed himself a small smile. First contact with the enemy had gone well. Very well indeed. The victory at Corvin Station changed everything. News spread through the Velen Confederation like wildfire. The humans had fought the Cost and won. Not just survived, but dominated. Suddenly, hope returned to a people who had forgotten what it felt like. Ambassador Telith stood before the High Council, presenting Commander Timon's proposal for a counteroffensive. The council members listened in stunned silence. The humans want to attack 3 Cost-occupied worlds simultaneously? Council member Draxus asked. That is madness. We do not have the ships or soldiers for such an operation. We have the ships, Tilith said, and the humans have the soldiers. Commander Tamon believes we can liberate these worlds within 1 month. 1 month? Another council member shook her head. The Cost have held those worlds for half a year. They have fortified their positions. They have millions of warriors spread across the systems. Tilith looked at each of them. The humans have a saying. The best defense is a good offense. If we stay defensive, we will eventually lose. But if we strike now, while the Cost are still confused about what happened at Corvin, we can take back our worlds. The council voted. The decision was close, but hope won over fear. The counteroffensive was approved. 2 weeks later, Captain Haywan stood on the bridge of the Velen cruiser Bright Star, watching the swamp world of Tegris IV grow larger on the view screen. This was one of the oldest Velen colonies, home to 2 million people before the Cost invaded. Now it was a fortress world, covered in Cost military installations. Haywan commanded a strike force of 500 human marines and 2,000 Velen support personnel. Her mission was to recapture Tegris IV's capital city and eliminate the Cost military presence. It would not be easy. Beginning orbital descent, the Velen pilot announced nervously. The landing craft dropped through the atmosphere, buffeted by storms. Tegris IV was a wet world, covered in swamps and thick jungles. The humidity was extreme, the temperature high. Perfect conditions for the Cost, who thrived in such environments. Also perfect for humans, who had evolved in similar places on Earth. The landing craft touched down in a clearing surrounded by twisted trees and murky water. Haywan led her marines out into the steaming jungle. The Velen soldiers with them looked miserable, their equipment already showing moisture damage. The humans looked comfortable. Spread out in combat formation, Haywan ordered. Watch for ambushes. The Cost own this terrain. They moved through the swamp, wading through waist-deep water. Strange creatures scattered at their approach. The air was thick with insects that the Velens found intolerable, but the humans mostly ignored. Private Daejung, a young marine from the southern islands of Earth, grinned as he swatted a flying bug away from his face. Reminds me of home, he said. Just needs more mosquitoes. The Cost attacked an hour into the march. They came from the water and the trees, using the environment perfectly. Their ambush was well-planned and executed with precision. But the humans had been expecting it. Haywan had grown up in a coastal region prone to typhoons and flooding. She understood water combat. When the Cost emerged from the swamp, they found the humans had already taken elevated positions on the exposed tree roots. Fire! Haywan commanded. The Marines opened up with their rifles. The Cost tried to close distance, but the water slowed them down. The humans picked them off methodically, using their superior range and firepower. When the aliens tried to flank, They ran into claymore mines that Sung Ho's demolition teams had planted. The battle was over in 10 minutes. 20 cost dead, 0 human casualties. Keep moving, Haywan said. That was just a scouting party. They reached the capital city by nightfall. The cost had turned it into a fortress, with walls made from local trees and defensive positions at every approach. Haiwan studied the fortifications and smiled. They built their walls out of wood, she said. Sung Ho, do you still have those incendiary charges? Always, Captain. That night, the humans launched their attack. But instead of a frontal assault, they used chemical warfare, not poison gas, that would be inhumane. Instead, they used tear gas, a crowd control agent common on Earth. To humans, it caused temporary discomfort. To the cost, with their sensitive respiratory systems, it was devastating. They pumped tear gas into the cost fortifications while Marines in protective masks moved in behind it. The aliens stumbled out of their bunkers, choking and disoriented. The humans cut them down or captured them. The few cost who tried to fight blind were easily outmaneuvered. Then Sung Ho used flamethrowers on the wooden walls. The dry wood caught fire immediately, and the fortifications burned. The cost evacuated their positions in panic, running straight into human ambush points. By sunrise, the capital was liberated. The surviving Velans emerged from hiding, shocked to find human soldiers walking calmly through their city. The humans had fought in conditions that would have killed most species, and they looked barely winded. On the moon base of Halcor, medic Yuna worked in a field hospital that she had set up in a damaged building. The fighting here had been intense. The cost had fortified the moon's mining facilities and were using the refined metals to build weapons. A Velan soldier was brought in with severe injuries from a cost claw attack. Yuna examined him quickly. The wounds were deep and infected. Velan medical technology was struggling to keep him stable. I need to try something, Yuna said to her Velan assistant. But it is experimental. She injected the wounded Velan with human medical nanobots. These microscopic machines had been designed to handle Earth's countless diseases and injuries. They were adaptable and intelligent, able to identify problems and fix them at the cellular level. The nanobots spread through the Velan's body. Yuna watched the monitors nervously. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the infection markers began dropping. The torn tissue started regenerating. The Velan's vital signs stabilized and strengthened. It is working, the Velan assistant whispered. How is this possible? Human medicine is designed for a hostile world, Yuna explained. Our bodies face constant threats, so our medical technology has to be aggressive and adaptable. Over the next week, Yuna treated hundreds of wounded Velans with human medical nanobots. The recovery rates were incredible. Injuries that would have taken months to heal were fixed in days. The field hospital became a place of hope, a symbol that the tide was truly turning. Meanwhile, engineer Dong Hyun worked in a captured cost facility, studying their technology. He was particularly interested in their bioship designs. The cost grew their ships rather than building them, using organic materials that could regenerate damage. Clever, Dong Hyun admitted to his team, but inefficient. Biological systems are slow to repair. He began designing hybrid systems, combining cost biotech with human engineering. He took Velan ships and mounted human railguns on them. The combination was devastating. The Velan ships had excellent shields and maneuverability. The human weapons had overwhelming firepower. Together, they created a new class of warship that neither species could have built alone. The first test was against a cost patrol fleet. 3 hybrid ships engaged 7 cost cruisers. The battle should have been one-sided in the cost's favor. Instead, the hybrid ships destroyed 5 cruisers and drove off the other 2 in less than an hour. Commander Timon watched the battle from the Inchen's bridge and nodded in satisfaction. The counteroffensive was succeeding beyond expectations. System after system was being liberated. The cost were in retreat for the first time in their recorded history. But Taemin knew this was not over. He had been studying cost communications and battle patterns. Everything pointed back to a central command structure. The cost had a queen, like Earth's social insects. She coordinated their expansion and controlled their forces. HFY joined him on the bridge, fresh from her victory on Tegris 4. "The Velans are celebrating," she said. "They think we have already won." "We have won several battles," Taman said. "But not the war." He pulled up a star map showing Kost territory. At the center was a red dwarf star system, heavily defended and marked with Kost symbols. "This is Kostera, their homeworld. As long as the Queen lives there, she will keep calling for reinforcements. Eventually, the Kost will return, in numbers too large to fight." "So we need to strike at the heart," HFY said. "Yes," Timon agreed. "We need to end this war at its source." He opened a communication channel to Earth Command. "This is Commander Timon, requesting authorization for deep strike mission into hostile territory. Target is the Kost homeworld. Objective is elimination of enemy command structure." There was a long pause. Then Earth Command responded. "Authorization granted. Additional reinforcements are being dispatched. Proceed with caution. Commander." Taman looked at his senior officers. HFY, Donghyun, Yuna, and Sergeant Kwan. They had all fought brilliantly in this campaign. Now he was asking them to do something even more dangerous. "The Kost homeworld will be the most heavily defended target we have ever faced," he said. "It will also be the most hostile environment. Kostera is a nightmare world even by Kost standards. High gravity, toxic atmosphere, extreme temperatures. Our intelligence says no Velan could survive there, even in a protective suit." "What about humans?" Kwan asked. Taemin pulled up the planetary data. Kostera has 1.4 times Earth gravity. The atmosphere is breathable with filters. Temperature averages 40 degrees Celsius. The officers looked at each other. Then Kwan shrugged. "Sounds like summer in the desert. We have trained in worse." "Then we are going," Taemin said. "Prepare Battle Group Taeguk for deep strike operations. We launch in 72 hours. Ambassador Tillith received the news with mixed emotions. Hope that the war might truly end. Fear about what would happen if the humans failed. She met with Timon one last time before the fleet departed. "You have already done so much for us," she said. "You have saved our people. If you stop now, we would understand." Taemin shook his head. "Stopping now would mean the Kost return later, stronger and more prepared. We finish this properly, or we do not finish at all." "Then may your harsh world's strength protect you," Tillith said. Timon smiled. "It always has." The Kost homeworld appeared on the view screen like a vision of hell. Kostera was a massive planet, larger than Earth, with a thick atmosphere that glowed red from volcanic activity. Storms larger than continents swirled across its surface. The gravity was crushing. The temperature could melt lead in some regions. It was beautiful in its own terrible way. Commander Taemin stood on the bridge of the Incheon, surrounded by his command staff. Behind his battle cruiser floated 11 other human warships and 30 Velan support vessels. It was the largest combined fleet ever assembled. Detecting multiple hostile contacts, Lieutenant HFY reported from Tactical. Counting over 200 Kost bioships in defensive positions. More are launching from the surface. 200 ships, the largest force the Kost had ever gathered. They were defending their queen, their homeworld, their very survival. This would not be an easy fight. "All ships, battle formation Delta," Taemin ordered. "Focus fire on their command ships. Velan vessels, stay at range and provide support fire. We are going in." The space battle began with a devastating exchange. The Kost bioships launched themselves at the human fleet like living missiles. They were fast and maneuverable, their organic armor regenerating damage almost as quickly as the humans could inflict it. But the humans had learned. Donghyun's hybrid weapon systems combined Velan energy shields with human railguns. The Kost bioships were tough, but they could not regenerate when torn apart by kinetic force moving at a significant fraction of light speed. The Incheon led the charge, its forward railguns firing in a continuous stream. Each shot was precisely aimed, calculated to maximize damage. Kost ships exploded or broke apart, their biological systems unable to cope with such violence. A wing of cost fighters tried to flank the human formation. Haywan spotted them immediately. Interceptors, engage those fighters. Do not let them reach our transports. Human fighter craft launched from the battle cruiser's bays. They were smaller and more agile than the cost bioships, and their pilots had trained in Earth's atmosphere against opponents who actually knew how to fly. The dogfight was brief and brutal. Cost fighters outnumbered the humans 3-1, but human pilots had better tactics and superior weapons. Within minutes, the Cost wing was destroyed. On the Velen support ship, Distant Hope, Yuna worked in the medical bay, treating wounded from both sides. Human casualties were mounting. The Cost were fighting with desperate ferocity, knowing this was their last stand. She worked quickly, her hands steady, despite the ship shaking from impacts. A wounded Marine was brought in, his armor breached by Cost acid. Yuna cut away the damaged sections and injected medical nanobots directly into his wounds. The Marine gritted his teeth but did not cry out. Pain was something humans learned to endure. "You will be fine," Yuna told him. "The nanobots are already working." "Thanks, Doc," the Marine said. "How is the fight going?" Yuna glanced at a monitor showing the battle. "We are winning, slowly." On the Inchin's bridge, Taemin watched as another wave of Cost ships emerged from the planet's atmosphere. The aliens were throwing everything they had at the human fleet, but human tactics were superior. Instead of matching the Cost ship for ship, Taemin used coordinated attacks. 3 human ships would focus fire on one Cost vessel, destroying it before it could regenerate. Then they would move to the next target. It was a grinding, brutal process, but it was working. The Cost fleet was slowly being whittled down. "Commander, we have broken through their outer defense line," Haywan reported. "The path to the surface is clear." Taemin nodded. "Launch the ground assault. Sergeant Quan, you are clear to proceed." In the troop transport, Spirit of Earth, Sergeant Quan assembled his strike team. 50 of the best soldiers humanity had produced, veterans of 100 battles. Among them were Corporal Yunji with her sniper rifle, Private Sung Ho with enough explosives to level a city block, Lieutenant Jie leading the assault squad, and Corporal Hyunwoo operating the heavy weapons. "Our target is the Queen's Hive," Quan briefed them. "Intelligence says it is underground, in a cavern system beneath the largest volcano. We drop in, fight our way through whatever guards she has, and eliminate her. Questions?" "Just one," Hyunwoo said with a grin. "Do we get extra pay for this?" The soldiers laughed. Even before the most dangerous mission of their lives, humans found time for humor. It was how they dealt with fear. The dropships launched from the Spirit of Earth, plunging into Castera's atmosphere. The ride down was violent. The planet's storms battered the ships, wind speeds reaching hundreds of kilometers per hour. Lightning struck the hulls repeatedly. The heat was intense. Inside his dropship, Quan felt the temperature rise even through his armored suit. The external sensors showed 45 degrees Celsius, and that was in the cooler regions. He thought about Ambassador Tillith's words, that no Velen could survive this world. Good thing they sent humans. The dropships hit the ground hard, their armored hulls digging into the volcanic soil. The doors opened and the soldiers rushed out into hell. The landscape was a nightmare of black rock, flowing lava, and toxic fumes. The sky was red and angry. The gravity pulled at them, making every movement require more effort. But the soldiers had trained in Earth's gravity all their lives. They had exercised in deserts and jungles and frozen wastelands. This was just another hostile environment to overcome. "Move out," Quan ordered. "Stay in formation. Watch for contact." They marched toward the volcano, a massive mountain that spewed smoke and ash into the air. The ground shook with tremors. Lava flows blocked some paths, forcing them to find alternate routes. The heat was oppressive even through their suits' cooling systems. The Cost came at them from every direction. These were not normal warriors. These were royal guards, bred specifically to protect the queen. They were larger, faster, more aggressive. Their armor was thicker, their claws sharper. The battle that followed was the fiercest the humans had faced. The Cost guards fought with suicidal determination. They did not retreat. They did not surrender. They attacked in waves, trying to overwhelm the human formation through sheer numbers. But the humans held. Yunji found elevated positions on the volcanic rock and provided covering fire, her rifle picking off cost leaders before they could coordinate attacks. Sung Ho used the lava flows to their advantage, channeling enemies into kill zones and then destroying the rock beneath them. Gi led her squad in close combat, using human reflexes and training to outfight the larger aliens. Hyunwoo operated a heavy machine gun, laying down suppressing fire that kept the cost from flanking. The weapon was designed for Earth's gravity and human strength. On Kastara, even with the higher gravity, Hyunwoo could barely control it. But he held the trigger down, the gun roaring continuously. They reached the entrance to the hive complex, a massive opening in the volcano's side. Cost guards poured out in a final desperate defense. The humans met them with grenades and concentrated fire. The battle at the entrance lasted 20 minutes of continuous combat. When the last guard fell, Quan checked his team. 3 soldiers were wounded but still mobile. Everyone else was tired but ready. They had come too far to stop now. Into the hive, Quan ordered. The tunnels inside were dark and hot. The walls were made of organic material, pulsing and alive. The Cost had grown their structures rather than building them, just like their ships. The corridors twisted and branched, a maze designed to confuse invaders. But the humans had mapped the complex from orbit using ground-penetrating sensors. Hei-Wan had provided them with a detailed route to the Queen's chamber. They moved through the tunnels methodically, clearing each section before advancing. They encountered more guards, but fewer than expected. Most of the Cost forces were engaged in the space battle above or defending the surface. The Queen had underestimated how quickly the humans would penetrate her defenses. The chamber at the heart of the hive was enormous. The ceiling disappeared into darkness above. The walls were covered in strange organic growth, and at the center, on a raised platform, was the Queen. She was massive. 30 meters long, her body swollen with eggs. Multiple limbs extended from her thorax, some ending in claws, others in strange sensory organs. Her head had dozens of eyes that tracked the humans as they entered. She made a sound, something between a hiss and a roar, that echoed through the chamber. Royal guards emerged from the shadows, 20 of them, the largest and most dangerous Cost the humans had seen. They positioned themselves between the soldiers and their queen. "Spread out," Quan ordered. "Focus fire. We end this now." The final battle began. The royal guards were incredibly tough, their armor resistant to small arms fire. The humans had to aim for weak points, coordinating their attacks. GA led a flanking maneuver while Unji provided precision fire from the entrance. Sung Ho used shaped charges to bring down sections of the ceiling, crushing guards beneath tons of rock. The Queen did not just watch. She joined the fight, her massive claws sweeping at the humans. She was slow but powerful, each strike able to crush a soldier if it connected. The humans dodged and weaved, using their agility against her size. Quan was struck by a royal guard's claw, the impact sending him flying. His armor saved his life, but the damage was severe. He struggled to his feet, his rifle lost. A guard charged at him, ready to finish him. Hyunwoo stepped between them, his heavy machine gun roaring. The guard's armor cracked and split under the sustained fire. It fell, and Hyunwoo helped Quan to safety. "Stay down, Sergeant," Hyunwoo said. "We have got this." The humans fought with everything they had. When their ammunition ran low, they used Cost weapons scavenged from fallen guards. When those failed, they used their knives and fists. They were bleeding and exhausted, but they did not stop. GA coordinated the final strike. "Sung Ho, can you bring down the ceiling on her?" The demolitions expert looked up, calculating. "If I use all my remaining charges at the support points, yes. But we will have about 10 seconds to get clear." "Do it," GA ordered. Sung Ho planted his last explosives while the others provided cover. When the charges were ready, he triggered the countdown. "Clear out, now!" The humans ran for the entrance. Behind them, the Queen realized what was happening. She tried to move, but her massive body was slow. The charges detonated. The ceiling collapsed. thousands of tons of volcanic rock falling on the Queen and her remaining guards. The humans barely made it out before the chamber sealed itself in rubble. They stood in the tunnel, breathing hard, covered in wounds, and exhausted, but alive. Quan checked the bioscanner. The Queen's life signs were gone, crushed beneath the mountain she had called home. "Mission accomplished," he said quietly. Above, in orbit, Commander Tai Min watched as the Cost fleet suddenly lost coordination. The bioships stopped their organized attacks and began scattering. Without the Queen's guidance, they were just animals, confused and leaderless. "The ground team succeeded," Heiwan said. "The Queen is dead." Taiman allowed himself a rare smile. "All ships, cease fire. Offer surrender terms to any Cost vessel that stands down. This war is over." 3 months later, Velen Prime celebrated Liberation Day. The capital city was decorated with lights and banners. Humans and Velens walked together through the streets, no longer strangers but allies. In the Grand Hall, Ambassador Tillith presented Commander Taimin with the Confederation's highest honor, the Star of Unity. The human commander stood at attention while the Velen leader spoke. "You answered our call when no one else would," Tillith said. "You brought firepower, yes, but you also brought courage and sacrifice and honor. You did not just save us. You taught us that strength can protect rather than destroy. That warriors can be heroes." Taimin accepted the medal and looked out at the crowd of Velens and humans. "Ambassador, you gave Earth something precious. You gave us a chance to prove that our harsh world did not make us monsters. It made us survivors, and survivors protect their friends." The hall erupted in applause. In the months that followed, the alliance between Earth and the Velen Confederation grew stronger. The Velens shared their advanced shield technology and faster-than-light drives. The humans provided military training and defensive systems. Together, they began exploring the galaxy as partners. Sergeant Quan retired from active duty and started training Velen security forces. He taught them human tactics, adapted for their physiology. They would never be as strong as humans, but they could learn to think like humans. Yuna established medical exchange programs, sharing human nanomedicine technology while learning Velen biological sciences. The combination led to breakthroughs that helped both species. Dong Hyun continued developing hybrid technologies, creating ships and weapons that combined the best of both civilizations. And Commander Taiman? He took command of the Joint Defense Fleet, a mixed force of human and Velen ships tasked with protecting the Alliance's borders. Because the galaxy was large and dangerous, and there were always new threats emerging. But now, the Velens had friends. They had allies who came from a death world, who had survived Earth's countless dangers, who knew how to fight and win. The galaxy had learned a valuable lesson. When extraterrestrials called for help, Deathworlders answered, and the galaxy would never be the same.